college in California. It's probably well known that he's probably wanted to play for a California team his entire life. I think from a competitive standpoint, he didn't want to join the Lakers because obviously you're playing alongside LeBron, you're playing alongside AD. I feel like he wanted to compete against them.
I wonder how much of that has to do with Kawhi's recent resume and what his legacy would be. What would winning a title with the Clippers, Broussard, do for his legacy?
I think it depends on when he won it. If he wins it in 3 or 4 years from now, I think the discussion kind of remains where it is now. He's one of the best players of this era. How does he match up with these guys? If he wins it next year and LeBron is still looking great, like a top 5 player, for Kawhi to go to a team in back-to-back years to lead 2 teams that have never been to the finals, let alone won a championship, to championships, then I think you begin to compare him. Okay, where does he, rank up historically with the Durants and LeBrons and Larry? I mean, the best small forwards of all time. I think you begin to think about that, knowing that I think that would be 3 titles in 9 years, and knowing that he's got room to win more, it would elevate him into a historical discussion, whereas if he wins it in a few years, I think it kind of remains this generation.
Well, let's just, for the sake of this discussion, let's just say he wins it next year and wins Finals MVP.
Okay.
If he were to do that, he skyrockets up the list of greatest winners in NBA history. He already has the best winning percentage of any individual player in NBA history. Now, some of that's circumstantial because he wasn't drafted by a bad team. He was drafted by a great team, but he still owns that record. He would have won a Finals MVP when he was a role player. That year, he averaged 12 points per game in the regular season, won a Finals MVP while stopping a three-peat in Miami, won a Finals MVP as a hired gun in Toronto, stopping a three-peat in Golden State, and then winning a Finals MVP the following year with the new organization of his choosing. There would be almost no one in modern NBA history, aside from Jordan, who would have the winning resume Kawhi has. He also would have the most unique resume in this regard. We've never had a player of that caliber in that discussion with the, relatively speaking, pedestrian individual accomplishments. He's been an all-star 3 times. His career averages are 17, 6, and 2.
Like, that's because of the early years in San Antonio.
Right.
I mean, Giannis started the same way. Scottie Pippen started the same way. Now, they're not where Kawhi is yet, but they developed over time as well.
Right. But
like last few years, last 3 years in San Antonio, it was like 21, 25.
Well, no, he's only averaged
2 years in San Antonio.
Right. He's only averaged
25.
20 points per game in a season 3 times.
Right. The last 3 years.
Well, not the year he missed. 3 of the last 4. The last 3 years that he played fully.
Yeah, without the 9 games.
But you don't get extra credit, though, for starting slow. Like when
yeah, but I don't think you look at his numbers and hold those against him. Right.
It's just...
Like, I get where you're saying, because it's not just rings. If your individual numbers aren't great and you got a ton of rings, Robert Horry, somebody, nobody's putting you in a high stature. But he would be different in that you'd look at once he became a star, it was like over. He just started winning and beating everybody. So I don't think you'd hold the 17 and 6 against him. I would.
Well, I just think when you're talking about guys, you mentioned Durant, right? Durant, right, so assuming Kawhi wins the title, Kawhi would have more titles, more Finals MVPs. I don't think you could elevate him past Durant.
Not next year, but eventually.
Chris does. But Chris
eventually?
does.
I mean, Kevin Durant joining Golden State?
Right.
Like, he joined Golden State?
Yep.
They were up on them 3-1? Like, he joins... Like, I'm not into reducing someone's titles, but when you're making a comparison... Kawhi's title in Toronto, it's just like LeBron's title in Cleveland.
Right.
They are not the same.
Of course.
And
that's
Kevin Durant having 2 and Kawhi having 2 are totally different.
Oh, I agree, but their championship part of their resume would be different in Kawhi's favor. But the individual accomplishments matter. First-team All-NBAs matter. League MVPs matter. Scoring titles matter. And for Kawhi,
but championships matter more.
I think we're getting to an era where we are looking more at championships. And it's one thing if Kawhi had won all those titles in San Antonio with a big 3, with Duncan and those guys. to last year's ring, as Chris said, no other stars. If he won it this year, yeah, Paul George is a star, but still, first year with the team, bunch of role players with you and Paul George, bunch of dynamic duos around the league, including one right down the hall, and you prevailed, that would mean a lot. Like Steve Nash has 2 MVPs. I'm not putting him ahead of Isaiah Thomas or many other, John Stockton, many of these other great point guards who don't have that.
Let's look at Kawhi's last 3 postseasons. Last 3 postseasons, averaging 28 points a game. He's shooting over 50% from the field, shooting 40% from three-point range. So, yeah, you can go back over the beginning of the career, and it does talk about the gradual process to other players being great compared to guys coming into the league, and they're great instantly. I think that the championships, they tell more of the story. And there's so much of Kawhi's book that's not written yet that there's no need to be talking about it. Like, there's no need to be, how does the end? We don't know how it's going to end. If he wins another championship, don't let him win 2 championships. And I do believe that in this next 3 years, because Kevin Durant will be in his prime. He'll be back playing in some capacity in 2 years, like we know. LeBron will be finishing up. There's other great players around. So I believe if Kawhi is able to win one in this era in 3 years after what he did in Toronto, then going to Los Angeles with LeBron then being across the hallway, he's in a special category, all right? We just haven't seen someone that mirrors the way his career has been. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's never
but there's no need for me to make up stuff just to try to fill in the gaps. Kevin Durant and going to Golden State and those 2 titles with Steph, who was a 2-time MVP, they are less than what Kawhi has done.
Oh, listen, on the winning part of it, I agree. But up until the moment Kevin Durant, not tore his Achilles, but strained his calf, was there ever a time in Kawhi Leonard's career he was considered a better player than KD? They're around the same age, around the same time in the league. The answer is no. There was never a time he was considered better than Kevin Durant. Now, I can't all of a sudden say, because of what happened in the next month, and now, again, we're giving him, for the sake of the argument, a title next year, that he just, oh, it's clear, it's obvious. Because championships might be the most important part of the pie, but they're not 90% of the pie. They're not all of the pie. The eye test, the what you've done throughout the longevity of being able to be a 25-10 or a 27-7-5 guy, those types of things, to me, when we're talking about Larry Bird, when we're talking about the best
This is the thing I think is significant. The people telling the story, make sure you put an emphasis on what was going on in the NBA. All right? Because Kawhi doing what he did after he tried to force his way out of San Antonio, wanted to go somewhere, they traded him somewhere, as you would say, trade him to another country. And he went up there and went roughshod through the league. He can't help Kevin Durant got hurt. But after he won a championship, you know what he had a chance to do? Join who you think is the best player ever. And you know what he did? He turned that down. And we need to make sure that we tell that story. Kevin Durant had an opportunity to turn down Golden State, but he didn't.
Absolutely.
And we need to make sure that we tell that story. I'm not trying to take away his championships, but let's just tell the story accurately.
And Nick, players can also improve with hard work. Now, you're right. Yes. Kevin Durant has been better than Kawhi. But if Kawhi keeps working hard, you can say, well, at a certain point, Kawhi Leonard just became better.
Right, which he could.
I have all these wide receivers. I have all these wide receivers. They say, oh, man, my numbers was so much better than you after 8 years. I said, don't stop reading the book.
Right.
Because I got another 8 years I'm getting ready to put on there, and 6 of them I'm going to be in the Pro Bowl. So don't start reading the book when you're not finished. And Kawhi, that's what we need to do as far as his career, Durant's career. Like,
it's not over.
Steph Curry's a good example. I mean, his first few years, it took him a while to make an all-star team, and certainly to go to MVP.
And whether he wins a title or not, to the point you made, his decision will be part of his legacy because of how good it was for the NBA. To not join with LeBron and to not have, we have one super team versus the rest of the league.
Especially if he beats him.
Right. Well, regardless, it was good for the league. If he beats him, it's good for him.
I got to call
so much for today.
I got to call Uncle Dennis and talk to him.
Take a break. Much more First Things First right after this.
Dude's gonna die, man.
I'm not going to die.
Dude's gonna die.